Hello and welcome to Good or Bad. I have seen the future of horror, and his name is Clive Barker. Or at least that's what Stephen King once said. This is Hellraiser. The 1987 horror classic was directed by Clive Barker and featured gooey stuff. So before this video, despite my love for horror movies, I have never actually seen any of the Hellraiser films, so this is a bit of a treat for me. The movie begins when a man named Frank, played by Sean Chapman, buys a mysterious box from a mysterious person. He looks to be wanting to use it for some kind of ritual or something. But he opens it up and that leads to a world of pain as he is attacked by chains. Not just any chains, but hellish chains. Which leads to pain and suffering. And then someone has to drag himself away from his acupuncture session to pick the box up. I'm sure that joke's been made a million times by now, but only once by me, so that's pretty unique. With a quick finger of his box, the hellish room is transformed into an empty room. Then we see our main characters turn up as they are moving into the house. This is Larry and Julia, played by Andrew Robinson and Claire Higgins. They are married, and Larry is Frank's brother. You know, dead Frank. Dead Frank that's rotting in hell. He comes back. Spoilers. Also, Larry has a daughter called Kirsty, who is played by Ashley Lawrence, who turns up later in the movie and is our main good person character. But considering she doesn't really put in much of an appearance yet, back to these guys. So they know that Frank had been staying there for a few days, but what Larry doesn't know is that Julia used to fuck Frank behind his back. Larry's back, that is. Frank was aware. Or at least you'd hope so. And as Julia looks through pictures, we see flashbacks. Flashbacks of their affair, which served to paint Frank in an aggressive and dominant picture, as well as giving us a better idea of Julia's state of mind, which is that she liked Frank because of that. Therefore, she is torn between the safety and reliability of Larry, and the more adventurous and risky lifestyle of his brother Frank. And then Larry cuts himself, but what he doesn't notice is that the floor is absorbing the blood. Well, not really the floor, more the hellish stuff that's present at the floor. But it does do wonders for resurrecting people who have been trapped in hell. Or at least I assume it's hell. I mean, the movie is called Hellraiser, so it's not really that big of a leap. But you know what? This scene here, you know, the one I'm showing you now, is really good. And gooey. And while we do find out it is Frank later on in the film, while this scene plays out, we don't really have much of an idea of who or what it is, because it doesn't really share any similarities with anyone. And the music during this scene is pretty good too. So basically I liked that scene. That's what you can take away from this bit of the video. Everyone is having a good old time at a dinner party, but Julia is fed up, so she goes upstairs and finds the half-reanimated Frank. It was a bit of a shock for her, I can tell you. But they get to talking, you know, as you do with crawling zombie people, and it turns out that he wants her help. He needs blood. It was blood that brought him partially back, so now he needs more to complete the process. Turns her into a bit of a circumstantial villain, really, as she brings men back to her house, luring them in with promiscuous promises, and then beats them to death with a hammer. They call her Crazy Lady with Hardware Tool Who Works for Zombie Man, also known as Julia. But yes, she kills him. He eats him, and each time he does, he gets a bit stronger. What of Kirsty, though? I said she was our main good person character, but I've not mentioned her since. Well, she has bad dreams, and she gets followed by a weird man who likes eating insects. At least I think they're insects. I mean, look at them, they look like insects. Although I'm not actually looking at the screen while I'm saying this, I'm looking at my camera, so I might be wrong. But I remember them being insects. And I think that counts for something. And as well as that, she doesn't get on with Julia at all. And she gets a creepy feeling from the house, which is completely justifiable really, considering what's going on. I do love how blissfully unaware Larry is. I mean, there's Julia dragging a dead body from one room to another. He never bloody notices. Not to mention that he's just bought this house, and he's not even gone into every single room more than once. Because the room that Frank's in, which he never leaves by the way, he was in once earlier in the movie, you know, when he cut himself, bled on the floor, blah blah blah. He cut himself in a different place and he travelled to that room. Not important. Point is, he's not been in that room since. And I don't know why, because if I bought a new house, I'd be shoving stuff in every single room. So no zombie corpse could hide from me for very long. I mean, it'd then kill me and eat me, but it wouldn't be able to hide from me. And that's something to hold on to. Probably. Anyway, back to the film. After Frank is able to walk, he tells Julia that he hasn't got very long, because the Xenobites will find him soon. And just who are the Xenobites, you ask? Hellish demon people who are led by this guy. He's officially dubbed lead Xenobite by the movie in the credits, which is how I know he's the boss. Well, that and the fact that he's, you know, he's on the box there. Case, not really a box. It's not important. He's there! So Frank knows he has to leave before they arrive, which means he needs to complete his makeover. Another sacrifice later, he explains what happened to him, very briefly. Before the whole Hellbox thing, he says he thought he experienced the limits of life. But when he opened the box, the Xenobite showed him pleasure and pain beyond the limits of life. So it's kind of like a 50 Shades of Hell thing, I guess. I mean, they do wear leather. And if it talks like a duck, ducks don't talk, they quack. Point is, if it does that, it's a duck. A duck of pleasurable pain. Why am I bringing ducks into it? That's just making it weird. You know, because that's normal. The box, though, essentially it opens up doorways. The Xenobites see that, step through, and take you. That seems to be the gist of it. So given that old Frankie boy is in a bit of a hurry, he wants blood fast. And while Julia is more than happy to sacrifice some random horny guys to help Frank with his, let's say, rehabilitation, she draws the line at sacrificing Larry, despite Frank trying to.
No. No, please, no, please. I can't bear it, please.
I like how Larry is really getting going there, while she is just saying, no, no, stop, I can't bear it. I mean, he does stop, but nowhere near as soon as you would hope he would stop. I know you can get a little caught up in the moment, but not that fucking much. Anyway, Frank does back off from killing Larry, which is good. That is good, because they are brothers, and blood is thicker than blood, which is what Frank is after. Larry's gonna die. I do really like the various designs Frank goes through as he rejuvenates. The costume design looks pretty good too, with all the blood on it. How does he not leave a trail of blood everywhere he goes? I mean, he's starting to explore the house. Does he just have a cleaner following him around? It is time for another spot of sacrificing. And this time Kirsty spots Julia leading the man into the house. The suspicion is building. Although she probably just thinks they are screwing. Bloody drama, eh? Although, she isn't cheating on him. Well, she is cheating on Larry, but not with this guy. She's just going to murder this guy. Which is worse. Less romantically dishonest, but still worse. But the movie does show her watching the window, although she doesn't really see anything, so I don't think she knows that she is murdering people. It's just a general, I knew it, that cheating bitch moment. So she goes in there to confront her. But when she sees Red Skull, she probably wishes she hadn't. They have a bit of a fight, but she escapes, and while she escapes, she grabs the box of death. And then because it's all been a bit too much for her, she passes out and some bystanders call an ambulance. But when she wakes up, the doctors won't let her leave, as she needs rest, and they want her to explain why she has blood on her that isn't hers. They always want to know about things like that. They seem to find it very interesting. But anyway, they leave her be for a bit, and she messes around with the box, which opens the wall. I wonder where this will lead us. You know, that thing is the spitting image of my Auntie Mabel. I just made Mabel up. I'm not that horrible of a person. Or am I? She runs back the way she came and ends up face to face with the Xenobites. We have the chattering teeth guy, or girl, mustn't prejudge, and of course our good old friend, the demonic hedgehog. And then we have the bad guy from Men in Black 3. This is his backstory, you see. Yeah, that's what this is. Okay, to be fair, it's literally just the glasses. Maybe if Boris shaved and put on some neck flab, he could look like a wrinkled dickhead too. Looks more like a thumb though, but I thought saying dickhead would be funnier. My god, the sacrifices we make for shit jokes. And last, but certainly not least, we have someone who looks like Crichton from Red Dwarf got captured by the Borg. And yes, I do realise Hellraiser predates a lot of what I just said, but thing is, I don't care. That is what they remind me of. They explain who they are and why they are here, so she tells them that Frank escaped. And there was Frank so worried that they would find him. And the truth is, they didn't even know he had escaped. They're not very vigilant, are they? She strikes up a deal with them. She hands Frank to them, and maybe they let her go.
I want to hear him confess himself. Then, maybe...
80s cheese. Meanwhile, Frank is trying to talk Julia into killing Larry, and a bit of back and forth later, they do. Off screen. And then Frank looks like Larry, which makes sense. I mean, he was reborn of Larry's blood. But why don't we get to see Larry die? Why do they do it off screen? And the movie isn't even trying to hide the fact that this is Frank, so you can't even say it's trying to fool us. Kirsty comes to the rescue, but finds her dad's smouldering corpse, and works out that new Larry is really undead Frank. Took her a while to work it out though, but she did get there in the end. And what follows is a quick chat with the Xenobites, a bit of cat and mouse, and oh yeah, Julia gets killed. Then the Xenobites want what is owed. So Kirsty lures him into the room, and they capture him. And while that was quite predictable, the big question is, will they let Kirsty... Actually, no, that's quite predictable as well. No, they don't. Or at least not willingly. Because she plays with his box and fights them off. Which is when her boyfriend shows up, because if he didn't, he wouldn't have been in the climax of the movie. After all the Xenobites are dealt with, I guess they just rubbed the box the wrong way. Oh dear, Mabel's having another pop at her, is she? Well, just get the Rubik's Cube of Death, finger it a bit, that'll sort it all out. And so, they leave the house having triumphed over the interdimensional S&M demons. But wait, there's more! That was very extravagant, that. Something else is about to happen. It's the creepy guy from earlier in the movie! Good, I was wondering who he was. Okay, he's picking the box up out of the fire that Kirsty just threw it into. Right. So the big skeleton dragon thing apparently took the box back to the mysterious person who sold it to Frank at the start of the film. Or maybe this guy is the dragon guy. I mean, if he can turn into a dragon, it's not that far-fetched that he could change his appearance as well. So Hellraiser. It was visually interesting. It was very visually interesting, and a lot of the effects and character design still hold up today. And given that this was made in the 80s, that's quite impressive, especially for a horror film. The characters were fun, even if they were a little generic. The blissfully ignorant husband, the torn wife, the bigger badder brother-in-law, and the innocent daughter. Stereotypes, you gotta love them. But that's not a bad thing, but it does mean they aren't at all memorable. Now the villains. Despite Pinhead being the face of Hellraiser, he wasn't the main villain here. Frank was. And like I said before, generic bad guy, but at least the story they gave him did mix things up a little bit. meaning that he is a bad guy that is trying to avoid even worse bad guys. And while the movie could have explored Frank's motivations more, which led to him opening the box, I think they had just enough of an explanation to make it work, but 5 more minutes on Frank's backstory wouldn't have hurt. And yes, I know the box is called the Layman, something spelt like this configuration, but since the film doesn't tell us that, I just thought I'd call it the box. Now, the Xenobites. Like I said before, very well designed. Everything in this movie is really well designed. But they are barely in the film. Granted, when they do show up, it is cool and I do want to see more of them. Which I guess is what the sequels are for, but that isn't really a good defense. But then again, what do you expect when you pack all of this into a 93-minute movie? Because most horror films with that kind of runtime have one villain. Like just Freddy Krueger or just Michael Myers. But this film has 2. It has to focus on Frank, then the Xenobites, and there just isn't enough time to do both. So some of it gets sidelined. As for the story, it's pretty straightforward. There's a box that you can get from somewhere, and you can use it to open up doors to other dimensions, and the Xenobites will step through and take you. Oh yeah, and these Xenobites come across as extremely powerful, but are pretty easily beaten in this movie. Hell, one of their victims even escapes them without them even knowing. So they're not the brightest bunch, although they are corny as hell. The voices and the writing are pure 80s cheese. And just look at how they were defeated. Kirsty used the box essentially as a gun and just shot them all. Well, most of them. One of them did get caught under a bit of house, which stopped him. But the biggest problem for me was the box being the ultimate weapon against them, which in itself is fine. But why does it have to be used as a ray gun? It just felt too easy and too convenient that she could do that. I feel like if the box was going to be their downfall, there should have been more to it, more that she had to figure out rather than just shooting them with it. It just felt lacking. However, the soundtrack definitely deserves a mention. I thought that was very good, especially during the scene where Frank crawls out of hell. Which again is a great scene, but overall, while I did have a lot of fun with this film, that ending lets it down so much in my opinion that it stops it from being anything more than corny horror fun. Which is a shame, because I have never seen any of the Hellraiser movies before, and for years people have been saying to me, you should watch them, they're good, go watch Hellraiser. So I think by the time I actually got to see it, I was expecting a little too much from the film, when really all it is cheesy 80s horror fun. Which is fine. You have been watching Good or Bad, and I'll see you next time. Turns her into a bit of a circumstantial villain, really, as she tricks men into coming back to her house. That's the one. Yes. I do love how blissfully unaware Larry is of everything that is going on. I mean, there's Julia carrying a jegged body. Yes, what's a jegged body? I don't know. Shut up. I do love how blissfully unaware Larry is. I mean, he never notices anything. There's Julia dragging a dead body from one room to another. He never fucking notices. Not to mention that he's just moved into this house. I don't know why I paused there, but I did. But he's just moved into this house, and he's been in the room that Frank is currently in, like, once in this film, and he's never gone in it since. If I just bought a new house, I'd be shoving stuff in every single room. That take was horrendous, wasn't it?